Well, we continue the position group breakdown. Running backs were last. Now we're moving over to wide receivers. A little bit of turnover here, a lot of changes, a lot to be excited about, but there's also a lot of unknowns with this class. A very young group of receivers. We'll get into that in a little more. First things first, my name is Justin Adams. I am a content creator and post-game host here at Nebraska Football at The Voice of College Football. If you like what we're doing here, please consider liking and subscribing. It really, really helps us out. But we'll get into the nitty and gritty of this here. And just to give you an idea of how I'm going to break this down, right? I'm going to go into a little bit of last season's breakdown of what class they were, junior, senior, freshman. And we're going to break down some numbers a little bit. And then I'm going to go through each individual wide receiver and just kind of give a quick take on what they offer and, their class and stuff like that, just breaking down these scholarship numbers in the wide receiver room. And I think there's some interesting tidbits that y'all will like here that'll give you some confidence. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay. First thing I wanted to start with, let's start at the very beginning. Let's start in 2022. Okay. Reason I want to start in 2022 is because the drop off that we saw from 2022 to 2023, there's a little bit more there than meets the eye. Okay. I think this is getting a little lost in, over time here, but let's just take it back to Trey Palmer in 2022, right? So Casey Thompson had a 63.1% completion percentage, 2,400 yards, 63% completion. I already said that. I don't know why I have it twice on my notes. 8.8 yards per reception, 17 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions. Okay. Now, Trey Palmer, 71 receptions, 1,043 yards, 14.7 average, 9 touchdowns. One thing that I will say with Trey Palmer out of the equation, Casey Thompson's numbers go from 2,407 yards to 1,364. Okay. And he also goes down from 17 touchdowns to 8 and 10 interceptions. Okay. So let's put that in perspective just a little bit. And the reason I point that out, I get it, right? Trey Palmer was on the team. Yes, he threw to him. You can't just subtract that. But the reason I'm pointing this out is because Casey locked on to Trey Palmer a ton. Trey Palmer was there to bail out this offense a ton. And he made Casey Thompson look a lot better than he was, in my opinion. You have a guy in Trey Palmer who was 95th percentile in target share at 47.1%. Okay. 47.1%. That means he got almost half of all of the targets, not receptions, targets, which means every time Casey Thompson threw him the ball. Okay, that's a target. 47.1% of the targets went to just Trey Palmer. Okay. Now he's gone. We move into 2023 and we have a different wide receiver room with no Trey Palmer. The other guys that were behind him were still on the team, but Trey Palmer's gone. Okay. Now let's break down the 2022 team versus the 2023 team in experience. Okay. The way I factored this up is I went by players or wide receivers who have played more than 10 games. Okay. Just for transparency to see who has been there for the longer part of the season, for the majority of the season. Okay. Now running through the class in 2022, there were 2 seniors, 2 juniors, or I'm sorry, 3 seniors, 2 juniors, 2 senior tight ends. I'm going to throw the tight ends there for a reason. No sophomores, no freshmen. 2023, okay, down from 3 seniors to 2, okay, 2 sophomores, 2 freshmen, and 2 sophomore tight ends, okay, and the 2 seniors both transferred in, okay. We'll get into those in just a second because I'm gonna get a little bit of Billy Kemp here. First things first, the last depth chart of the season. Here's how it broke down versus Iowa. The starters in that game: Alex Bullock, sophomore; Jalen Lloyd, freshman; Malachi Coleman, freshman; Ty Hahn, sophomore. The starting 4 wide receivers on that depth chart, not a single one of them was above a sophomore. Okay. These are things that we do have to take into account when we're looking at the offense year over year. And I understand people were calling for Satterfield's head. And, for A lot of reasons, the turnovers being the main one, but just the stagnation of the offense. And I think people really pointed the finger at Satterfield because it was it was the easy target right there. But when you look at this team and the operation and the way this team was handicapped and the year-over-year change from the 2022 experience to the 2023 and the lack of experience in this 2023 season, I think that should give us tremendous confidence moving forward that this wide receiver room is going to grow and develop together. Okay. Now, I said I'd go into the two seniors that they had on the 2022 team and the transfers in. Okay. I'm going to run into Billy Kemp real quick. Billy Kemp, slot guy. When he came over for Virginia, though, what he said in the offseason in 2022, a few months before he came over to transfer portal, he said that Virginia was using him a lot more on the outside, but he wanted to be more in the slot. Okay. And Nebraska primarily used him in the slot. However, he had a drop off in his catch rate before coming to Nebraska. He had a 72.6% catch rate in his sophomore year, 57% in his junior year. So his actual catch rate went down. His targets went down. Then coming over to Nebraska, primarily in the slot, like I said, but then he became really like a target hog or just he was a guy that was targeted a little heavily in certain situations because he was really the only receiver that we had left that had experience after Marcus Washington, Isaiah Garcia Castaneda went down, and he took a lot of hits, and he's a littler guy. So, and I don't think they got to utilize him the way that they wanted to. Another thing about Billy Kemp is he can't be your primary guy because he averages, a little under 9 yards per catch, not a lot of yak. His speed is okay, but 4.41 I think was his fastest recorded time, and I think the lowest was a 4.6. And there's not a lot of yak potential there. Billy Kemp is a guy that you can go to in the slot when you need to dial up a play. However, the outside receivers weren't there to open him up more in the slot. So Billy Kemp really struggled coming over after these injuries and stuff like that. And it showed, but he was still one of the top performers of last season. Now, let's go ahead and we're just going to break down the wide receiver room class by class. Okay. We're going to start with freshmen. And again, I'm going to go into each of these receivers, just kind of a quick level overview from what I've gathered from their film. So we have Jakori Barney. Jakori's an athlete, 6 foot, 160. It's an 89 rated 3-star. I said before, I feel like every 3-star we land is like 89 rated, and you're about to see why in a second. But Jakori Barney, he is a speedy guy, but on his film, he can catch some contested balls. So he does have that ability. He has a 6 foot height, just a very slight frame, but that'll fill out. Maybe he'll get up to about 180, 185, maybe if it doesn't impact his speed too much. But Jakori Barney is going to come in an athlete and play probably multiple positions. Moving on to Quinn Clark. Quinn Clark, 6'5", 190, just a athletic freak. That is the biggest thing you see when you watch his film. He does have a ton of speed, especially at 6'5", like 6'5", 190, he can fly. And his dad was a former Nebraska running back, from 86 to 89. So he has that family lineage of athletic ability that Matt Rule likes to key in on. He loves dual sport athletes, and he loves athletic lineages, whether it be parents, brother, sister. There's a lot of that in this recruiting class. Devon Hall, okay, he's 6'1", 180, 89 rated 3-star from Bellevue West. Again, one of the Nebraska kids that came in from Bellevue West, the trio there. So Devon Hall, yeah, he's a speedy guy, track guy, dual sport, really good blocker. I believe he played basketball as well. So really good blocker for his, for his size, 6'1", 180. He's going to probably fill out a little bit more. But when you have a guy who is as athletic as he is, as fast as he is, and is also a good blocker, that is key, because you want somebody who's going to be able to be out on the field, not only when they're getting the ball, so it doesn't give away that, it's a passing play. You want a guy on the edge. We saw last year with some of these holding calls. You want a guy who can block on that edge. And Devon Hall, it shows up on his film. He attacks leverage, and he does a very good job at sealing out his blocks. Isaiah McMorris, okay, 5'10", 168, 88 rated 3-star from Bellevue West as well. Very, very twitchy. He's quick. He's like a jitterbug. He can bounce around. He can make cuts. He can make people miss. Very, very speedy. He's the deep ball guy. Track speed. Also played basketball. So what's the trend here? You see a lot of guys who are speedy, athletic, and dual sport and former, athletic lineages. And the reason Matt Rule likes to go with athletes is because he feels that athleticism has a ceiling, right? But skill, you can work on that and develop that, okay? Athleticism does have a ceiling. He's right. So what he does is he wants to go out and he wants to get these super athletic guys, right? And he's not just completely dismissing the skill set. However, he puts more weight into the athleticism. So if there's flaws on the film, he feels that his staff and him can work through those things and turn them into a great player because of their athleticism that they already have, and take advantage of those physical traits, the athletic trills, whatever that means, athletic traits, and their physical capabilities, being able to use their body, being able to use their strength, use their leverage, little things like that. Last one, Kelen Smith. Okay, Kelen Smith was actually listed as a tight end, but he's listed in 24/7, the recruiting services, as a tight end, but he is listed in Nebraska as a wide receiver. 6'3", 205, 87 rated 3-star. Very, very athletically gifted. Great concentration. He can he's very good at holding his focus on the ball. The ball's tipped or whatever. He's very good at going to get it. And he's a great catch radius. And he's one of those guys that can go pluck a ball out if it's underthrown, if it's thrown left, if it's thrown right. And at 6'3", you like the size of these freshmen. You have a 6'3" guy, we have a 5'10" guy, a 6'1" guy, a 6'5", and a 6-foot guy. Okay, all of these are speedy guys, athletic guys, and they're all 6 foot or over. We know when we had Frost, we went into that little trend of where I don't believe we had a single receiver over 6'1" at one point. And that was a recipe for disaster, as we saw. And now we're getting some of these big-bodied guys back in here, and we got some in last year as well. So a lot to be excited about this freshman class. But we're probably not going to see too much of them on the field this year. Well, I shouldn't say that because we saw what happened last year, but I think we have a little more depth this year. Now, let's move over to the redshirt freshman. Jaden Dotss, Demetrius Bell. Jaden Dotss, wide receiver, 6 foot, 195, 89 rated 3-star. Short and stocky, very, very fast, but can power through arm tackles. He runs like a running back, and he played running back, so it makes sense that he runs like a running back, but he's good for yards after catch, because he has that running back vision, and he has that ability to break tackles, powering through tackles. Typically, running backs are better at breaking through arm tackles because they're used to going through the line and meeting that first level. Wide receivers usually are out on the second level to start, and they usually have to make a couple guys miss. Okay, so the vision there, a little bit different. These running back guys typically do have a lot better vision and ability to plow through those tackles. Demetrius Bell. He's an athlete, 6'1", 175, 87 rated 3-star, very athletic kid. Excited about him, but needs to put a little more size on. Probably I would imagine he's probably about 185 now at this point, but might see those guys on the field a little bit this year. Moving over to the sophomores, okay. We have Jalen Lloyd. Now we're getting to some of the guys that we saw a lot this year. Jalen Lloyd, wide receiver, 5'10", 160, 97 rated. I don't think that's right. 97 rated 3-star, 87 rated 3-star. Typo on my notes. I am bad at typing. So, but also a Nebraska kid from Omaha. Okay. We know what he is, a speedster, deep ball threat. And then we have Malachi Coleman. 6'4", 190, 4-star, 96 rated 4-star from Lincoln. A couple Nebraska kids again. So you see what Matt Rule's doing here. We have the Bellevue West, and then we have Omaha and Lincoln. Okay, so there's a lot of Nebraska kids coming back, and this is another reason why I think these kids are going to be here for the long haul and sustain. We're going to be able to sustain this wide receiver room, not lose a lot of guys to transfer portal, etc. And then going through the juniors, I'm just going to run through the juniors real fast because we're probably going to break down a lot of these guys in detail. But Elliott Brown, Alex Bullock, and Tavion Thompson. Alex Bullock, of course, got a scholarship last year, and he had moments, but he also had some drops and stuff like that. But he was thrust into a position where, he became a scholarship player and ended up by the end of the season have to be a wide receiver 1. And that's just not what he's intended to be. He is a football player. He is good route runner, very skilled, but he does need some polish. And but that's something. I mean, he's he has another season. We have this offseason under his belt, and I think Alex Bullock can take a step next year and be pretty good. Now let's move over to the seniors. Okay. And we know, we have Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. Hopefully, he can get healthy, get to 100%, and we can see, what we've been wanting to see from IGC. See from IGC. Okay. Isaiah Nair, much talked about, did a video on him, but, he's a guy, I'll go into the stats in a little bit, but he's a burner, right? He's going to be basically the more polished version of Jalen Lloyd and the, further along version, more experienced guy, Jamal Banks. Now, Jamal Banks is going to be the big guy target. He should probably, he's going to be the guy that mentors probably Malachi into that X receiver role next year. So it's really good to have a guy like Banks because Banks uses his physical tools very, very well. He is a big frame, big body guy, and he doesn't shy away from contact, and he will get physical to go up and get the ball. He maintains his red line, which means when he's forced to the sideline, he keeps within that 5-yard range of the sideline. So that way the quarterback has a little bit of an ability to put it over his shoulder. And that's key. You got to be able to give your quarterback a chance to give you the ball. Use that space. That cornerback has a right to that space just as much as you do, and he has a good job of maintaining that red line, which again is 5 yards off the sideline. So a lot to be excited about with this year's wide receiver room. And I'm gonna pull up a little bit of last year's stats. Okay, let's run through Billy Kemp, Jalen Lloyd, Alex Bullock, Marcus Washington, and Malachi Coleman. Okay, Billy Kemp, 35 receptions, 310 yards, 8.9 per reception, 1 touchdown. Okay, he's gone. Jalen Lloyd, 6 receptions, 237 yards, 39.5 per, and 3 touchdowns. Okay, so Jalen Lloyd will be back, 3 touchdowns and 6 receptions. Kind of crazy. Alex Bullock, 15 receptions, 221 yards, 14.7 per reception, and 1 touchdown. Marcus Washington, 8 receptions, 176 yards, 22 per catch, no touchdowns. And then Malachi Coleman, 8 receptions, 139 yards, 17.4 average, 1 touchdown. Okay. Another thing, Marcus Washington was supposed to be the on-field leader. And of course, he went down. So again, when you don't have that alpha out there that knows and has got the lumps and can get out there and lead and fire these guys up, that is a big part of this too. So now I went over these numbers on the live stream, but I'm going to bring them back up here for a second. Okay. There's these 2 numbers right here. Okay. And I'll give you a quick second to drop a comment and guess. You can pause the video, but I want you to guess what each one of these are without cheating. I want you to guess what the 87 receptions, 15 yards are, and the 103 receptions and what I'm comparing. Okay. Drop your comment. Okay. Hopefully you paused. Hopefully you dropped a comment. But the 87 receptions to 1,215 yards and 6 touchdowns, that is our wide receiver room combined last year. Okay. Now, the 103 receptions to 1,532 yards and 5 touchdowns is Banks' senior season and Nayer's last fully healthy season. Okay, that's 2 receivers that we got in the transfer portal that numbers wax the entire receiver room that we had last year. And so that right there is a very, very telling into what we're going to be looking at this next season, because I don't think people understand just how handicapped this offense was with the injuries, with the fumbles, losing both running backs. Again, you know, the running backs had a big part in the receiving game last 2022 as well. So let's keep that in mind and understand that, our points per game, went down, but they weren't very good in 2022. 102nd in 2022. So I'm going to get into a little bit of the team numbers in another video. It might be tomorrow, but that is, in essence, when you have a guy coming in that develops talent, okay, he gets here and he loses basically the majority of his wide receiver room, whether it be to the draft, portal, or injury. Then he has to come in with a new OC, new everything, loses 2 running backs. Okay. The guys can't stop fumbling, and he still comes out of that with 5 wins. Okay. And the difference in the offense year over year, yes, it was worse, but 2022, it wasn't very good scoring offense. I believe 22.6 points per game. It wasn't very good. So it's not like the drop off was steep, and there's a lot of reasons for the drop off. And those things will probably start to resolve as these guys get intertwined in Matt Rule's strength and conditioning and his development and the culture and leadership that he's building. And this is why I think Nebraska can take a bigger step than a lot of people expect next season, because I don't think people outside of Nebraska realize just what Matt Rule is building there, and the fact that he had to come in and restart this entire culture and build it. He's getting the foundation there. The foundational players are there. As you see, the freshman group of receivers is our biggest group, and they're all extremely, extremely talented. And then the two incoming transfers who are going to make a big impact. Without Jamal Banks, this would have been a tough season. But with Jamal Banks, things get a lot easier. That's going to open up the Isaiah Nayers. If we had a guy like a Jamal Banks last season, I guarantee you Billy Kemp would have gotten a lot more targets and had a lot more space to work with. It seemed like every time Billy Kemp caught a pass, he was getting hit immediately. And he's just 5'8". He's too small for that. So he's a guy, he's kind of twitchy, not very fast at the top end, but he is twitchy. So it wasn't one of those guys that we can get in space. And just the offense in general was hamstrung. Another thing that leads me to believe that Matt Rule is solid in these guys and that they're going to be here for the long haul is the retention that we already saw. I brought this up before, but 77% of Nebraska's the entire team's production. So 77% of the Nebraska team's production, offense, defense, special teams, everything is returning. Okay. What that typically means in this, the way they kind of calculate the points based on this, when you're at 80% or more, that's about a 3-win increase. Okay. It's a big difference in the points. It's about a 12 point per game difference, I believe. And Nebraska's third in NCAA in that. I believe Iowa State, one other team, are the only 2 that are over 80%. Nebraska's third at 77%. Okay, so expect a jump there. Lastly, I've talked about this before as well, but there was a aggregate group of data that was put together that goes over it. What it does is it randomizes every single play outcome from every single game. Okay. And that'll tell you how many expected wins and losses you're supposed to have. It basically measures how lucky or unlucky you are. And Nebraska was number 1 on that list. And they have been a couple times in the last few years. But they were expected to win 3.3 more games than they did based on the timing of penalties, fumbles, and all of that. That data right there shows just how unlucky this team is. And it's literally a stat to show how unlucky this team is, or our teams in general are. And we top that list. And it's funny because the other team tied with us is UCF. So trend there. I don't know. But yeah, so this, the wide receiver room breakdown, did the running back, did the wide receivers. Okay, next I might be doing offensive line, might do a QB room breakdown. Let me know what y'all want in the comments. I'm also going to be doing a position group tier list, and I can tell you who I'm most excited about in terms of what position group and what position groups I think need the most, help in the coming years. So overall, though, the running back and wide receiver room, they couldn't have done a better job of building that this offseason with what they had. And the way they got these guys in here and got them to commit, it shows a lot about the feeling in this building. And you hear it from the players alike, the recruits alike. Everything is going the right direction. And we have a lot to be excited about. So let's just look forward to 2024 and this new Big Ten. It's the season that we need to be able to show out because it's an arms race right now in this new Big Ten conference. So, but like I said, that's my wide receiver preview. That'll do it for me here on this one. If you like what we're doing here, again, please consider liking and subscribing. It really, really helps us out. YouTube doesn't really like us otherwise. And if you want to join us on our Tuesday live streams, go ahead and feel free. They are at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central on Tuesdays, every single Tuesday. So y'all join us back here on Tuesday, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.